A blind friend solved our quandary. He had an old guide dog harness, which fit Walter well, and he gave me a pair of dark glasses and an old white cane. We really looked the part, so we began our blind and guide dog lessons. What a sight, the blind teaching the sighted to be blind. It's not easy to be blind. I must admit, Walter was a much better student than I was, and he thoroughly enjoyed his role, and he learned it quickly. After 2 weeks of intensive training, our blind master told us we were ready for the great adventure. With but one suitcase and Walter as my guide, we battled the maze of delays at the international airports, and we made good our escape from this world that we knew. Walter was not only accommodated by the airlines, but he was treated like their honored guest. I envied him because I wished I could charm the flight attendants as well as he. Our plane, it made a broad turn and headed east. And I looked down at the tangled freeways and felt very good about leaving the mayhem and the insanity behind. Once we were in Europe, it was time to travel by auto. We cast off the blind guise and went to the French version of a used car lot. The salesman showed me his flashy cars up front, and he spoke admiringly of them, mostly with his hands. But I was enticed by a dust-ridden, nondescript, diminutive car, half hidden in the back of the car lot, which would better fit my budget. The salesman shook his head. The price was right for both of us, though, and I didn't try to bargain. He put a fresh battery under the hood and started her up with a bit of apprehension. She purred. We both smiled. I opened my wallet, and I made that little jewel mine. I'll spare you the travel log through Europe, but I must speak more about this little car, as it is quite nondescript. She reminded me of the economy version and ancient progenitor of the Bug. Her 2 pint-sized cylinders sipped petrol by the thimbleful, and her 5-liter tank never tore up my budget. If I were to rate her engine, I would call her, about 10 donkey power. Excuse me for dwelling on this precious jewel, but as you may have already guessed, she'd already become my French love affair. Walter really loved her too, since I'd taken out passenger seats and put a pad in for him to sit on. He felt so important riding up front, and he was a great traveling companion. He is a good listener, and he speaks mostly with his body language. He's constantly alert and sat there wide-eyed, wide-mouthed, and had a look of glee as we sped along in that little car over the Alps. To get on with our destiny, we had made it to Samos, a large Greek island. Once there, I bought a 7-meter one-hander to sail about the Asian, to visit all those lovely isles. She was strong, and with her lateen rig, she handled like a dream and could take anything that sea had to offer. Her cabin had a soft bunk and a small galley, which was all I needed. Walter loved his new home, as I placed a fish box on the foredeck for his wash. He would perch there like a proud Anubis, patiently waiting for the dolphins to come for their daily visit. After several visits, the dolphins' shrieks and Walter's barks turned into the greetings of joy, and it was always the same. It was as if something primal had awakened in them. On a calm day, I would drop the lateen rig, and Walter would join the dolphins in their play. The dolphins were always protective. After a time, I would fish Walter out of the sea, tired and happy. The dolphins had really made his day. And with my strength returning, I scraped and sanded and varnished, and then I polished all her bronze fittings until they were bright. We were a proud crew on a proud vessel. I loved the challenge of those frequent squalls, because it made me feel that I was pitting my audacity against those marvelous Greek gods, and with each victory I felt even more at peace with myself. And those wretched thoughts of mortality, they'd left me. This beautiful vessel was my Greek love affair. She never complained. She was slow and wonderful, giving me all the time I needed. It was time. So I took my knife and began chipping away at my body cast. The progress was slow, but I was able to free myself. My back was stiff, and every moment felt like I was tearing something loose. And then my back felt like a bowl of mush. But after a time, I began to gain my strength. We had come to a violent storm, and Walther was fiercely barking in response to the nearby lightning and claps of thunder, possibly to drive the storm away, when suddenly a bolt of lightning struck our mast, and the lateen rig came crashing down on her deck. Walther laid his ears back and crept to me in an apology, perhaps in the belief that his barking had caused this retaliation by the storm. I laughed and told him he was terrible. He gave me a sly look, and he wagged his tail. Then, with the guilt gone, he proudly resumed his watch. Walther likes to be told he's terrible when it comes to protecting his property. I rigged a sea anchor with a bucket and some oily rags to soothe the waters, and we safely rode out the storm. We limped back to Samos, and the grim realization came that repairs to the vessel would deplete my funds. We had reached the point of return, but we weren't ready for that. A fateful thing had happened. The United Nations had run the Iraqis out of Kuwait, and there was a lot of talk about fabulous jobs that might be available to rebuild Kuwait. With the flip of a coin, I picked up my French love and ferried her across to Israel. And then we headed east. My papers were in order, and somehow we were allowed into Saudi Arabia.